Hi, this is a special video, because it is part of Woodworking Europe Collaboration Build 2015. First of all, I want to give thanks to Luis Martinez, Karol Kolanowski and Peter Freitag for inviting me to take part. This collaboration consists in picking one item, special to our region, and make something to display it. Once we edit the video, we all publish it at the same time. So below this video, in the information, you can find the list with all the participating and the links to their videos. Every country and region has its legends, often with evil spirits that harm the living. But here, in Galicia, in the northwest of Spain, we have a potion, and a ritual to put off those evil spirits. We call that potion queimada, and it is a beverage that we prepare in one of these earthenware pots, burning a kind of moonshine, sugar and some other ingredients. I have the secret to make a tasty queimada, and maybe one day I will show how to make it in one video. But in this video I will make a glass cabinet to display this earthenware pot that is very traditional here in Galicia. First I cut the strips to the length I need. I cut the 4 vertical pieces 30 cm long. I adjust the fence again, and I cut the 8 horizontal pieces 40 cm long. Now I leave the saw disc until it protrudes 15 mm, and I adjust the fence to cut 15 mm too. I cut a rebate in all the pieces. So now I have all 12 pieces with a rebate, and I also have all these strips that I will use later to hold the glasses. I had to rasp the interior corners because I had something like ½ mm uncut. Then this is one side of the cabinet, and in one end of the 40 cm long pieces I will cut a rebate like this, so they fit in the corner this way. Here I put another 40 cm long piece, so we can see that I just need to cut that shape in one end of all the 40 cm long pieces. I adjust the height of the blade. I use a stop block to cut the width I need. And I cut a rebate in one end of the 40 cm long pieces. After some tests, I get a nice cut that fits perfectly. I just need to repeat it 8 times. And I only needed to retouch them slightly with a chisel. I arrange all the pieces to make the shape of the cabinet, carefully, so they don't collapse. and I mark the position in all the pieces. I mark the same number in the end of every two strips that are in the same joint. I draw one arrow pointing to the joint, and the same number to each side, and I do the same with all the joints. The arrow shows me where to put the dowels. Then, with a 6 mm drill bit, I drill a couple of holes in the 40 cm long pieces. I will put the dowels in the head of these pieces. So I drill a couple of holes in both ends of all 8 strips. I drill 32 holes. Now, following the numbering, I mark the size of the short pieces. I put the dowel centers, and with the help of another strip, I mark in the right place. It is better if I put the numbers facing the table. Carefully, I make all the marks, and I drill a hole in all 32 marks. Now I want to put a dowel in that piece of wood that protrudes the head of the strips. So first I have to drill in the other end of the strips, right here. After that I will mark where to drill. Now I drill the 8 holes I need. I must remember that the number shows the first holes I drilled before, and this is the new hole I drilled. This will go against this corner I am putting together. I put the dowel center in the hole, and I mark in the corner. And there is where I have to drill. I must make sure I select the right numbers to each joint, and one by one I make the 8 marks I need, and I drill the 8 holes. But it is not a bad idea to check if I am precise. I drill all the holes. I slightly sand all the cuts in the head of the strips, and I glue all the parts together. I pour some glue in the holes, and in the dowels, and in the head of the strips, and I put all the parts together. Due to the position of the dowels, I had to force the structure so all the pieces fit. And because I needed a lot of time, the glue began to dry, so I had to be some more aggressive to get all the dowels into the holes. With a couple of straps, I hold the structure while the glue dries. I should use some clamps at 90 degrees with the straps, but I only made sure all the joints were closed, without gaps. I cleaned the excess of glue, and I made sure everything was square. And I let it dry overnight. Once the glue dries, I remove the straps. I check the joints, and I can see how the pot will look inside the cabinet. To make the top door and the base, I will use these strips, and I want to center them there. They protrude 6 mm to each side, so I add 12 mm to the width of the cabinet. I meter cut one end of the 8 pieces I need. In one end of the strips I mark the length I need, that is the width of the cabinet plus 12 mm, and I meter cut it. And I use it to cut the other 7 pieces right to the same length. I sand the cuts. I clean and I glue the parts. I use that strap to clamp the square. And I make sure it is a perfect square. And I make a second square. And now it is time to begin with the worst part, sanding everything. I sand it with medium grit sandpaper. I clean the dust, and now I use fine grit sandpaper. I sand until I can't see the marks of the medium grit sandpaper. And finally I use that sanding block, that is the finest grit that I have, slightly sanding the sharp edges. And when the glue is dry, I also sand the 2 squares. This is the difference before and after sanding. And now I cut 4 circles. And I sand them with my Dick sander. And finally I sand them by hand. The legs of the cabinet will go below these circles. I use these finial curtain rods to make the legs. I cut them with an angle of 20 degrees. With this jig and the pencil mark I can cut 4 equal legs. I have another 4 finial curtain rods that I will use as a decoration on top of the cabinet. That is a piece of the curtains rod that I glue in the hole of the finials. I use my sanding block to slightly sand all the pieces. And after sanding the cabinet structure, the window and the base, the circles and all these pieces, my arms hurt. I need some rest. And a cup of coffee. I cut that square of plywood and I sanded it. It goes in the base of the cabinet. I route a rebate to fit the glass in the window, first with a router bit with a bearing. Then I cut the rebate deeper and wider, with a stray bit and the router fence. And with a chisel I cut the corners. The glass goes there, and I hold it with some strips. I had to cut those longer strips to use them to hold the glass in the window. Besides, I have the strips I cut in the beginning of this video. These square strips are to hold the glasses in the structure. These are rectangular. To fit the rebate in the window. They go there, and I meter cut them. I cross cut the strips that hold the glasses in the structure. I cut them to the right measure, and I number them to know where to put them later. I drill 2 guide holes in all the strips. And with this thin nail I mark where to drill the guide holes in the window and in the structure. And I drill the guide holes in the window. Now, with that simple jig, I can put those finials all in the same position. I drill a couple of dowel holes in the corners of the window. With the help of the jig and the dowel centers, I mark the finial. And with the help of the jig I used to cut them, I drill the holes in the finials. I insert the dowels with some glue. And I put all 4 pieces in place. I put some glue in the base of the finials I cut before in angle. And I eyeball to put them on the circles. I don't use dowels here. I eyeball to put them on the circle, and then I measure to put them more or less in the same position. And I let them dry. Once the glue dries, I drill a guide hole in each leg, and I secure them with 1 screw. This will go here, in the corners of the second square I made. I put some glue on the corners, and with the help of the jig we saw before, plus a couple of strips, I put all them right in the same position. I try to align the inclination of the leg with the line of the meter joint. I glue them and I let them dry. In the meanwhile, I measure and mark the position for the hinges, and I insert there a couple of points. I put the window in place, measuring to make sure I center it. And I press against the points to mark the position for the hinges. I remove the points and I drill the holes for these hinges. And I drill in the structure the guide holes to screw the strips that will hold the glasses. Now, once the glue in the circles is dry, I drill 2 guide holes. I drill inclining the bit, drilling towards the leg. With a larger drill bit, I slightly contour the holes to hide the screw's head. And I drive the screws. If some of the screws protrude the wood, I file the head. I put the structure on the base. I put them upside down. And I measure to center the base. I drill guide holes. And I attach both parts with the screws. I put the square piece of plywood in place, and I prepare to varnish. I insert those bended nails so I can put that side down after I varnish it. I varnish everything with spray. I make sure I varnish every part. I let it dry. I slightly sand and I spray a second coat. And I let it dry. Now, very carefully, I can put the glasses in place. And I screw the strips to hold the glasses. I install the hinges in the window, inserting them with the help of a clamp. I put the glasses in the structure while I put in place the strips, and I screw them. I put the window in place, and I fit in the hinges. And finally, I can put the queimada pot inside the display cabinet. Those circles and the decorations on the top try to imitate some characteristic parts in a traditional building here in Galicia, the hórreos, a kind of raised granary. Thanks for watching. Remind that in the information below this video you can find a list with all the participating in this collaboration and the links to watch the projects they made. I think a small greenhouse could come in handy.